Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I just kind of wanted to take some time and give my first impressions on the brand new rune system that we finally have gotten a chance to play with. Now, obviously it is still early. There's a lot of stuff that's still really broken and that people are figuring out, and just in general a lot of weird things going on with runes. So these are just my opinions on essentially what's going on with the current system. Now, generally speaking, I'm just going to be talking about the keystones here, as I do think that those are the most impactful and the things that most people are having issues with, I think. But I will be covering some of the other runes in the system that I think in particular could use some possible looking at. So anyways, let's go ahead and get into the first tree here with Precision. Now, Precision, I think, is probably the most balanced of the trees. I don't feel like anything in Precision in particular is that overtuned or that particular broken. I think all of the keystones are relatively balanced. Press the Attack, I think, has a decent niche. At the same time, it's not always the right call. Lethal Tempo is very good as well. And then there's Fleet Footwork as sort of a catch-all for any champion that doesn't necessarily like them. I am disappointed that Press the Attack, or that the Precision tree has no real options for AP champions. It seems to be mostly about auto attackers, and there's nothing that sustained damage over time mages like Ryze or Cassiopeia would want. But at the same time, I think that it generally does the goal that it's set out to do. I think that the options in general are fine. The legend tree is interesting, and I like that you kind of can gain bonuses even if you're not doing well. You'll just gain them more quickly if you happen to be doing very well. So in general, I think this is the best tree, the most balanced tree, and I like just about every single option in the Precision tree. Now, moving on to Domination, I know a lot of people have some issues with the keystones in Domination, particularly Dark Harvest. People were saying it was going to be really broken, but I haven't seen too many champions actually running Dark Harvest. I've seen it on occasion with an Evelynn or possibly a Xin Zhao, but usually it feels like most champions that want Domination are running either Electrocute, which is just Storm Raiders, or Thunderlord's Decree, sorry, and Predator, which I think are both good options. Predator might have a bit too good of a synergy with Hecarim. If he has Predator and he kind of runs at you with his Eon, you pretty much die. But I think that in general, I'm happy with the choices. I would also prefer it if Electrocute was a little bit more clear about how exactly you proc it. Currently, it just says 3 different attacks, but does that mean 3 auto attacks? Does that mean 2 auto attacks and an ability? Which abilities proc it? Would Darius Hemorrhage proc it, for example, after it damages them? Does it count towards it, I should say? There's some weirdness about Electrocute, whereas Thunderlord's Decree was a lot more simple, but I'm fine with it as a whole. The rest of the options in Domination, I am a fan of. I think that they are interesting. I think especially the lower tier runes, where you have the Hunter, the Hunter runes, I guess. I like that they reward you for takedowns and they give you relevant attributes. I think Ingenious Hunter is maybe a bit niche, as most of the time you don't care about your activated items being useful. The Ward Masteries being here as well also feels a little weird to me, as generally speaking, if you're in Domination, you're going to be doing lots of damage and you don't really care about zombie wards or Ghost Poro, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. In general, it gives it a little bit more applicability to other kinds of champions, and I do like actually Domination as a secondary path. I think there are a lot of options that other champions could like while primarying in something else. So overall, I'm fine with Domination and how that works. Sorcery is where things get a little weirder and a little bit more niche. Now, I like Sorcery's keystones. Summon Airy may be a little overtuned, as people are picking it just for the additional harass and literally nothing else. They can't proc it on their allies, but they don't care. They just want more damage. And it feels like that's the sort of niche that Arcane Comet should be filling, but Arcane Comet's unreliability means that I understand why people go with Summon Airy over that. Phase Rush is also a little underwhelming, especially for champions like Juggernauts that are supposed to like taking it. The problem with them is trying to proc it. Again, it's sort of the same thing as Electrocute. What counts as 3 different spells or auto attacks or whatever, what have you? How do you proc this? And when it does come out, it does feel underwhelming in comparison to a lot of the other keystones. Sorcery also has just a lot of interesting, weird options. I know some people are using Transcendence to great effect by stacking multiple Black Cleavers, which is actually not a very good build, guys, by the way. It's not worth the gold. It's not worth the effort to do it. But I like that there is an option for Transcendence in other builds. Ultimate Hat, again, feels a little niche to me. Absolute Focus feels a little niche to me. Scorch, I would honestly like to have a lot more damage, as it is basically an early game rune. It doesn't do anything in the late game. 60 bonus damage doesn't really matter that much in the late game, but early game it can be quite significant. So I would like to see Scorch tuned up, maybe reduced to a flat value, so it's incredibly effective in the early game for champions that are looking for early game dominance, and then falls off as the game goes on. If you want late game, you can always go with Gathering Storm instead, which I do like that rune. I feel like it doesn't get as much use out of it as it could, but that's people aren't seeing the value in it quite yet. Resolve is also an interesting tree, and I think possibly has the weakest keystone, in my opinion, in Guardian. It feels difficult to proc it because you have to be standing so close to your ally. So in order to get the benefit, I have seen almost no champion actually take Guardian. I think maybe I've seen one champion go with Guardian, as opposed to anything else like Aftershock and Grasp. So I think it could possibly use some love, maybe a slight range increase. Aftershock, I actually really like. I think it gives Vanguards good initiation power, or champions that want to be going all in like Thresh. Grasp of the Undying, I also think I really like how it gives more of a benefit as the game goes on. You have it in lane for the early damage, you have it in late for the bonus health, so I like how Grasp of the Undying is currently functioning. Unflinching feels a little weak to me. I don't think that the bonus 20% tenacity and slow resist is that good, or the 15% after casting a summoner spell. It doesn't feel like it's that useful to me. Font of Life and Demolish are so much better than it. The other thing is Revitalize was confusing, as it just says heals and shields are 5% stronger. I'm glad they clarified it on the PvE today and said heals and shields that you cast are 5% stronger. That's fine. I think in general, though, Resolve doesn't go far enough in addressing champions that want to be durable. I think at the most part, building damage feels really great in runes, whereas building defense feels almost impossible to do in runes. You don't get as much benefit out of stuff like Iron Skin or Mirror Shell as you do if you were to spec into offensive keystones. So I would love to see some kind of benefit thrown the Resolve's tree way to make it feel a little bit better, especially for champions like Vanguards and Wardens who really just want to be building defense. The Inspiration tree I actually have warmed up to quite a bit. I was not interested in it at all when it first came out. I thought everything in it was too niche, but after playing with it, I can see that there's a lot of really useful things, and Inspiration is probably the best secondary path in the game at the moment, just because of the wide variety of options you get, and it's certainly a very good option for when you know you're going to be behind in a lane, taking your secondary in Inspiration, as opposed to taking more damage and just hoping for the best. Now, Unsealed Spellbook does feel like the weakest of the options here. I just haven't seen it be that useful. Now, it did give some scares in the late game when the enemy support is swapping to Smite, so they have 2 Smites for objectives. That gets a little bit scary, but across the board, it hasn't seemed that useful, especially because in order to get shards, you have to use summoner spells, and you generally try to not cast your summoner spells as much as possible. Glacial Augment, I honestly have not seen. No champion I have seen in the game yet has run Glacial Augment. I don't think it's because it's weak, I just think it's because it feels like more of a, if you want Glacial Augment, you're going to be taking more of a damagey option. Kleptomancy, people are saying is busted. I really haven't seen I haven't seen Kleptomancy be that good. I think it's very effective in early game power, but effectively late game when you're full build, you stop having a keystone. So I don't know how effective it really is. I feel like that's a pretty big trade-off. There are a couple other keystones in this path that just aren't useful. Hextech Flash Traption feels pretty niche. Minion Dematerializer feels pretty niche. Cosmic Insight, I think, is good if nobody feels like wants to take it. In general, I think that there are a lot of options in this path that don't do anything, but the rest of the options are so good. Futures Market, Biscuit Delivery, Perfect Timing, all really good runes, and I think that's what gives inspiration its powerhouse. I just wish it had more options to I wish its keystones were better, so it would feel better to primary in it, because you give up a lot of damage and durability to go into inspiration primary. So, but those are all just my thoughts on the rune system. I really do like the system as a whole. I think it just feels better. All of your runes that you take, you feel in some way during the game, as opposed to the old system where, for the most part, you didn't care about your runes, and some masteries you just didn't feel at all because they're just minor stat boosts. And I think that so far there isn't anything I've seen that's too busted. I do think that Kleptomancy is not as bad as people are making it out to be. If you guys are interested in hearing more my reasoning behind it, I can put out a video on that if you would like. But I think the rune system is probably fine in general, and with a little bit more work can get into a really good place. Anyways, those are just my thoughts on the new system. Go ahead and let me know what you think of the new runes down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. And if you're hungry for more Grab the Lantern content, you can check out my blog, grabthelantern.tumblr.com. I upload an article just about each and every single day for your viewing pleasure. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I will talk to you all later.